but knowledge comes easily to those with understanding. Madam Speaker, I want to read it again for the member for City West. A mocker seeks wisdom and never finds it. 14 verse 6. But knowledge comes easily to those with understanding. So, Madam Speaker, we on this side this evening are going to give the member from City West and the colleagues on the other side some understanding of how projects and how our involvement in Cricket World Cup is. Madam Speaker, there's so many issues that he brought up in his presentation, of rambling, of all sorts of things that, as a politician, it's very hard not to get into the politics right away. But my role is to talk very quickly about World Cup Antigua and its involvement, and where our involvement started in Cricket World Cup 2007. And Madam Speaker, the commitment to become involved in Cricket World Cup predated the United Progressive Party. During the Antigua Labour Party administration time, I travelled as part of a team, paid my own way, they wouldn't fund me, to go to St. Lucia as part of a working group to make our commitment. During that time, Madam Speaker, what was being negotiated was a document called the Host Venue Agreement. And that Host Venue Agreement is a document that outlined and guided our involvement in Cricket World Cup 2007. Madam Speaker, as a result of us signing that Host Venue Agreement, which each territory had to sign, certain commitments were made. Not unique to the Antigua government, but to the Barbados government, Jamaica, everybody who was hosting had to sign a host venue agreement. And in that agreement, certain commitments were made. So one of those commitments was that a local organizing committee needed to be formed. World Cup Antigua was incorporated as a limited liability company on April 20th of 2004 in accordance with the laws of Antigua and Barbuda, and commenced operation on September 15th, 2004. Its principal activity is to act, or is still in force, is to act as the local organizing body in Antigua and Barbuda, providing services in relation to the hosting, staging, and organizing of matches and functions of Cricket World Cup 2007 and in 2007 in Antigua. And the important part here, Madam Speaker, under the terms of the host venue agreement, and that host venue agreement is between the ICC Cricket World Cup 2007 and World Cup Antigua, and the host, which is ICC and West Indies Cricket Board. What I'm trying to lay out, Madam Speaker, is the map which guided our involvement. It wasn't the UPP administration decided, these are things that you need. We all were part of an agreement. Signed in 2000, but by the time we signed it, it was 2004, 2005, right? Where we made an agreement to participate, like other countries in the Caribbean, in this world event called World Cup 2007. And we had to fulfill our obligations under the host venue agreement. It wasn't a determination that me as chairman of World Cup, which I became later on, or other people, to do things on their own. So I want the general public to understand that we were fulfilling a mandate signed in contract back in 2004, 2005. Madam Speaker, in 2004, the government of Antigua and Barbuda had to give her a guarantee of $4 million to start World Cup Antigua, which was done. In March 22nd, 2005, the government of Antigua and Barbuda transferred 77.83 acres of land to World Cup Antigua, which later became, or has been known now as the site. And that is the site on which the venue, the stadium, was built. So, Madam Speaker, that is just basically an outline as to where this thing started. So that as we move forward, we were guided by our commitment to Cricket World Cup. One of those commitments was that we had to provide a stadium. And other members would deal with how the stadium construction and that sort of stuff. But that was done. I am going to talk specifically about our involvement as Cricket World Cup Antigua Inc., because the member asked some questions. Now, Madam Speaker, the member from City West has asked for information regarding World Cup Antigua and how we haven't provided information and so forth. Before I give him some of that, there are issues regarding how contracts were issued. Now, Madam Speaker, I've made it clear that we were part of a regional agreement and we signed a host venue agreement. So, Madam Speaker, regarding contracts that dealt with World Cup Antigua, the member mentioned $12 million and so forth and how that money was expended. I will give him a bit in more detail, but I want to talk in general of some how these contracts were entered into and how they came about. These contracts were generally in two categories. The first category of contracts related to the preparation of the Sir Vivian Richards Cricket Ground for Cricket World Cup 2007 in accordance with our obligations of the host venue agreement and other stipulations set down by ICC and Cricket World Cup. The larger of these contracts were part of what were considered to be global contracts negotiated by Cricket World Cup 2007 for all the venues. Well, we were part of this global contract arrangement as World Cup Antigua Inc. And some of these fall into, for instance, GL Events. GL Events, a French company contracted to provide temporary facilities at the host venues to include seating, tents, equipment. The total cost of World Cup Antigua was $11 million US. That's where they're talking about
Thank you very much, and I now acknowledge the Honourable Member for St. John City West.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I stand to present the motion standing in my name dealing with the Cricket World Cup spending. And Madam Speaker, if I may be allowed to read the contents of this motion, which is in the form of a resolution. It reads as follows. Whereas transparency, accountability, and the maintenance of good ethical standards are prerequisites to good governance, and whereas the UPP's campaign pledge to the nation to right all the wrongs and to promote and maintain transparent and accountable governance, recognizing that a lack of transparency and accountability would result in entrenched corruption in the public sector, contrary to the ethical standards expected of a truly transparent and accountable government, and would give rise to socio-economic and political corruption, including widespread discrimination, poverty, distortion of competition, institutionalized nepotism, corrupt public contracting, and organized special interests, extortion of state resources. And whereas corruption is a function of weak government, and that corruption increases poverty levels in absolute terms, has a negative impact on investments, trade, economic growth, human development, safety, and security. And whereas the UPP government's refusal to make available